Okay, assalamu alaikum. Good evening, or good afternoon, or good morning, wherever you are. Hope you are well. Sorry for the late start. I was trying to get the baby to stop crying. Assalamu alaikum to everybody, as always. Let's check who we have with us. Hello, Fihir. Assalamu alaikum. And assalamu alaikum to you too. Of course, I'm not going to be able to read that. Over Helix here. Hope you're all well. Okay, let me get this presentation onto the screen. Chrome tab. It's working this time. Last time, if you recall, for some reason this program wasn't working. I don't know what happened. Maybe the computer just needed a restart. I'm not sure. Face red heart shape. What does that mean? Interesting username, but it says face red heart shape. All right, cool. Maybe I'm missing something. Anyway, hope you're well. So I've got a brief presentation today regarding shirk and the dua in the Qur'an. So I've mentioned before that there's a lot of things in the Qur'an which are usually muddled up and or just pushed under the umbrella of shirk, right? So I've mentioned before that what's usually put together as shirk in the Qur'an in traditional Islam are actually 4 different things in the Qur'an. So there's shirk proper, and then there was dua ma'allah, and then there's dua min dunillah, right? And then there's ibadah min dunillah, right? And shirk actually takes the place of ibadah ma'allah. That's what shirk actually means, right? So instead of saying ibadah ma'allah, the Quran says shirk. Anyway, we'll talk about that a little bit, but I wanted to just share a few verses which show this distinction between shirk and dua. So we'll talk about the terms first in a minute, and then we'll get into it. So first thing, shirk, as I've mentioned a few times, it's about ibadah, right? Shirk is only about ibadah as in servitude, not as in salah, Sawm, Hajj, etc. It's not the rituals. Ibadah is not the rituals. Ibadah is to literally be like an abd, like a slave, right? So it's about servitude. Ibadah is about servitude. And the key verse to understanding that shirk is about ibadah is the final, often quoted verse of Surah Al-Kahf, where it says, "A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajeem." Looks like I didn't copy and paste this very well over here. It's supposed to be, of course, the first word. It's supposed to be qul, right? So it says qul innama ana basharun mithlukum yuha ilayya annama ilahukum ilahun wahid. Say, O Muhammad, say, I am only a man like you, a mortal like you, a bashar, to whom has been revealed that your ilah, your God, is one God. Innama ilahukum ilahun wahid. Okay. And it says, فَمَنْ كَانَ يَرْجُو لِقَاءَ رَبِّهِ فَلْيَعْمَلْ عَمَلًا صَالِحًا وَلَا يُشْرِكْ بِعِبَادَةِ رَبِّهِ أَحَدًا. So whoever would hope for the meeting with his Lord, let him do righteous deeds of reconciliation. If you want to be more literal, عَمَلًا صَالِحًا, and not associate, لَا يُشْرِكْ, right? In the ibadah, in the worship. Here, of course, in the translation, they have worship, but I've put in parentheses what is in Arabic. It's the ibadah, right? The word worship in English doesn't really come close to what the ibadah is in Arabic, okay? Worship in English is more like, adoration and these sort of things. And, and of course, in English, Muslim world, when we say worship, people usually mean, of course, the rituals of worship. But in Arabic, we're talking about ibadah. لا يشرك بعبادة ربه أحدا. Let him do no shirk in the ibadah of his Lord to anybody. Okay, so not give a share of your ibadah, of your servitude, to anybody else with Allah. Okay, your ibadah, your servitude, that state of being, easily led, obedient, humble, deferent, all of these kind of things, the way a good slave would be to his master, right? That ibadah, that attitude of servitude. Don't share that out with anybody else with Allah. Don't give some of it to Allah and some of it to other than Allah. No, it's only for Allah. Okay, that's what is meant here about shirk. Okay, and another set of verses that helps us to understand the shirk isn't what a lot of people think now, which is that it's about associating something with God's attributes or something, right? That it's about God's attributes and this. No, it's about ibadah. It's not about saying something else has some of the attributes of God. That's not shirk. Okay, that's not the shirk that's mentioned in the Quran. The shirk that God is talking about in the Quran is about ibadah. Okay, it's not about God's sifat or his attributes. Okay, so the verses have the clause which says what he has not sent down any authority about. Again, I've got some typos here. These things, I usually just write them up very quickly. Don't have much time. What he has sent down no authority about, it should be. Okay, those verses are also important in understand that shirk has got nothing to do with shirk in attributes, right? I.e., in saying something else has attributes like God or similar to God or has a share in God's attributes. That's not what shirk is about. Okay, so you've got these verses which say, for example, قل إنما حرم ربي الفواحش ما ظهر منها وما بطن والإثم والبغي بغير الحق وأن تشركوا بالله ما لم ينزل به سلطانا. So mention here what God has forbidden. Say, my Lord has only forbidden immoralities, what is apparent of them and what is concealed, and sin, right, and oppression without right, and that you associate with Allah that for which He has not sent down authority, right, and that you say about Allah that which you do not know. وَأَن تَقُولُوا عَلَى اللَّهِ مَا لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. But the phrase here which I want to highlight is this part here, مَا لَمْ يُنَزِّلْ بِهِ سُلْطَانًا. Why? Why is that clause even there? Why is that clause even there? Because the shirk, again, it's about ibadah. If it was about God's attributes, then this clause would not be there. Why? Because there will never come a time where there can come a time where God sends down authority for people to be in ibadah to something other than Him. That can happen. That's not an impossibility. But what's impossible is for something else to actually have the sifat of Allah. Okay. Another verse like it, وَيَعْبُدُونَ مِن دُونِ اللَّهِ مَا لَمْ يُنَزِّلْ بِهِ سُلْطَانًا وَمَا لَيْسَ لَهُم بِهِ عِلْمٌ. And they worship, or they are in ibadah besides Allah, to others besides Allah, that for which He has sent down no authority. Okay, so the question is, could there be a time where God will send down authority on something that we should be in ibadah towards it other than Him? Because that's the flip side of that, right? They are being blamed for being ibadah to that which God has sent down no authority regarding. So, will there be things, or could there be things? Is it a possibility that there are things for which Allah would send down authority that you would be in ibadah towards them? Is that? So this is what I wrote here. So why is that clause important? Because there will never be a time where anything shares in the attributes of God. That's a logical impossibility. But God can send down authority that we should be in ibadah to others with Him. That is a possibility. Okay, it's not impossible. And we have an example of that in the Quran. The verse, قُلْ إِنْ كَانَ لِلرَّحْمَنِ وَلَدٌ فَأَنَا أَوَّلُ الْعَابِدِينَ. Say, O Muhammad, if the most merciful for Rahman, and Rahman, doesn't mean the most merciful, the Almighty. If he did have a son, then I would be among the first of His worshippers, of those in ibadah to Him. right? So what does that mean? That means if God did take a son, we would be in ibadah to that son, right? So shirk, sorry about the baby crying. So shirk is it's the what's haram in shirk is to be in ibadah, to do shirk with what God has not sent down any authority, right? But if God did take a son, right, then obviously we would have to be in ibadah to that son, right? I know it isn't an impossibility that God could take or have a child, only that He would beget, right, a child. Lam yalid wa lam yulad. He begetteth not, nor is He begotten, from Surah Al-Ikhlas. But He has, in fact, already told us how He would take a child if He wanted, right? So we have this verse, لو أراد الله أن يتخذ ولدا لاصطفى مما يخلق ما يشاء. Right? If Allah had intended to take a son, and so there's if here, if God wanted to do that, He's telling us how He would. He would have chosen from what He created, meaning that that son would still be a created thing, right? That son would still be a created thing, and that created thing, we would have to be in ibadah towards it, right? Towards that child, right? Of Allah, this theoretical child. If Allah had wanted to take a son, He would have taken a son or a child or a daughter, whatever, from what He created. He would have created, of course, the best. لَاصْطَفَى مِمَّا يَخْلُقُ مَا يَشَاءُ. He would have chosen the best of what He has created, and He would have said, "This is my son or my child," and we would have to be in ibadah to it. Just like the previous verse says, قُلْ إِنْ كَانَ لِلرَّحْمَنِ وَلَدٌ فَأَنَا أَوَّلُ الْعَابِدِينَ. This is the Prophet Muhammad being commanded to say that. If Allah really did have a child, I would be the first to worship it, right? The first to be in ibadah to it, and that would not be shirk, okay? Or you could say it would be shirk, but it would be shirk for which Allah has sent down authority, okay? So that's another way of seeing that shirk is not about it's not about God's attributes, right? This is just something which is being popularized and spread by the Salafi Wahhabi da'wah, right? They made the free tawheeds, right? Just like the hadith says, we would follow the way of those before us, the Jews and the Christians. Just like the Christians made God three into one, right? We have a section of the Ummah which has made Tawheed a three in one Tawheed, right? That is the Tawheed of the Sifat, Tawheed of of the Asma and Sifat. They said the Tawheed of God's attributes and names, and then they said there's the Tawheed of Uluhiyya and the Tawheed of Rububiyyah, right? And that these three Tawheeds are one. That's what they say, right? It's exactly the same. Well, not exactly the same, but it mirrors the Christian division of three in one Tawheed, which they believe is a Tawheed, right? Anyway, and also, so this last verse we mentioned, لو أراد الله أن يتخذ ولدا لاصطفى مما يخلق ما يشاء. Right? If Allah had intended to take a child, He would have chosen from what He created whatever He willed, right? And it says, "Exalted is He, Allah, the One. Exalted is He. He is Allah, the One, the Prevailing. هو الله الواحد القهار. سبحانه هو الله الواحد القهار." Now this verse follows on and is a response to the claim in the previous verse, not the one I have up here, but I'm talking the verse 4 from this surah. Previously, where people in the previous verse, people are in ibadah to others with Allah, i.e. shirk, and their justification isn't that they think they have a share in God's attributes, right? The previous verse says what? It says, going a couple of verses back, it says, إِنَّا أَنزَلْنَا إِلَيْكَ الْكِتَابَ بِالْحَقِّ فَاعْبُدِ اللَّهَ مُخْلِصًا لَهُ الدِّينَ. Indeed, we have sent down to you the book, or Muhammad, in truth. So be in ibadah to Allah, in ikhlas in your deen, in sincerity and purity towards Him in your deen. And then it says, in the next verse, أَلَا لِلَّهِ الدِّينُ الْخَالِص. Undoubtedly for Allah is a pure, it says pure religion, but it's about having your deen solely for Him. The same idea of Tawheed, ikhlas al-amal lillah, ikhlas al-din lillah, that your deen should, your actions and everything should be purely for Allah, right? Purely like unmixed with being for anybody else. Ala lillahi din al-khalis, right? To Allah is the deen which is it's pure. It's been given to him pure, without parts of it being for anybody else. And then it says, وَالَّذِينَ اتَّخَذُوا مِن دُونِهِ أَوْلِيَاءَ, and those who have taken other than him awliya. And when you think of awliya in the Quran, think of there's awliya shaitan and awliya of ar-Rahman, right? Awliya of Allah and awliya of shaitan, right? And it's in servitude towards the awliya of shaitan, that we are in, that someone in ibadah to shaitan, which is why, in the Quran it says, that on the day of judgment Allah will say to humanity, did I not make a covenant with you, O Bani Adam, that you would not be in ibadah to shaitan, right? And ibadah to shaitan comes a lot of the time through ibadah to his awliya. Anyway, so it says, وَالَّذِينَ اتَّخَذُوا مِن دُونِهِ أَوْلِيَاءَ, and those who have taken other than him or less than him awliya, right? What do they say? They say, مَا نَعْبُدُهُمْ إِلَّا لِيُقَرِّبُونَ إِلَى اللَّهِ زُلْفَى. We are only in ibadah to them so that they can bring us closer to Allah. They don't say we are only in ibadah to them because some of them can bring the life to the dead, or some of them have the hearing of Allah, or some of them have, they don't talk about these things having attributes from the attributes of Allah. That's not why they are in ibadah to those things. They're in ibadah to those things, or those people really, because they think being in ibadah towards them will bring them closer to Allah, right? And then the verse says, إِنَّ اللَّهَ يَحْكُمُ بَيْنَهُمْ فِيمَا هُمْ فِيهِ يَخْتَلِفُونَ. God will judge about this, right? Will judge about this. Now, this is the interesting thing. Why isn't it just being said that these are, the people of hell, or these people are damned, or these people, etc., or they're going to be threatened? No, it's people who say this, right? Who say we are only in ibadah to them so that they can bring us close to Allah. Their judgment is postponed to Judgment Day. We are not to judge them, right? It says, إِنَّ اللَّهَ يَحْكُمُ بَيْنَهُمْ فِيمَا هُمْ فِيهِ يَخْتَلِفُونَ. Allah is the one who's going to judge those who say these kind of statements, right? Who say they're in ibadah to these, to the awliya, they're in ibadah to these awliya, in order that so they can bring them closer to Allah, right? So this is going to be judged by Allah on the day of judgment, meaning that there's something there which needs more scrutiny than we are able to give, right? It could be that they really are sincere and say that the only reason they are in ibadah to these awliya is because they really want to be closer to Allah, right? But Allah's going to judge it, right? And the indication of this verse is that this is not true, that they are not being sincere. That's why the end of the verse says, إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يَهْدِي مَنْ هُوَ كَاذِبٌ كَفَّارٌ. God does not guide the one who is a liar and an ingrate, right? An ungrateful liar. So the indication is that what they're saying here, مَا نَعْبُدُهُمْ إِلَّا لِيُقَرِّبُونَ إِلَى اللَّهِ زُلْفَى, that's just a lie, it's a cover, right? It's not true, right? That's not really their intentions. That's not why they're in ibadah to those awliya. Okay, so let me just read out what I wrote here. Point is, they are in ibadah to them, thinking that they will bring them closer to Allah. This was true of pre-Islamic Arabs, as it is true of Muslims who are in servitude to their, they're in ibadah to their sheikhs, their imams, their madhabs, their sects, and thinking that these imams, sects, madhabs will bring them closer to Allah. Or rather, that is likely only their excuse, okay? Because the verse hints that the reality is that this claim is a lie, and they are just ingrates, right? They're just kuffar, right? They are, and you can see that in when they are shown. Look here, this is what Allah is commanding, so follow that. That is the ibadah towards Him, right? If Allah is commanding something, shouldn't you be in ibadah to what He's commanding and saying directly? They say no, we will follow the way of our salaf, and they will bring us closer to. Well, so are they really wanting to be to be in ibadah to Allah, or is that just or are they really just drunk on their ibadah to the salaf, that they've just dogmatically accepted, taken in that the way that they should follow is the way of the salaf, the way of their forefathers in religion. And the real motive deep down isn't that they want to be in ibadah to Allah. It is that they want to follow the way of the Salaf, they want to follow the way of their forefathers, they want to follow the way of their sect, right? They have become dogmatic and fanatical towards their sects, their sheikhs, their imams, right? That is what's really going on, right? And so it's a type of ingratitude, right? That Allah is giving you the chance to be in ibadah to Him directly, and you turn away from that, right? That's kufr, right? And you lie and you say, I really want that. Oh, you really want that? Then why are you so steeped in the ibadah to these awliya of yours? Anyway, let's move on. So when it comes to dua, right? So we've talked about shirk, and shirk, as I've said, I've mentioned this in previous streams. If you want to go back and look more in depth about shirk, but that's the conclusion we're going with right now. That shirk is about ibadah, right? So let's look at dua. So dua in the Quran has a very similar meaning to the English word invoke, right? Invoke in both its meanings. So invoke in English can mean to call on, meaning to call on a deity or a spirit in prayer or supplication, or as a witness even, for inspiration, or for inspiration, right? So as a witness or for inspiration. Okay, so that's one meaning of dua, right? Or invoke, which, like I said, it's a similar meaning in Arabic. It can also mean to cite or appeal to in English, to invoke something, like to invoke the law, to invoke an authority, right? So to cite or appeal to something or someone as an authority for an action or in support of an argument, right? So that's another meaning of to invoke, and that meaning is there in dua as well, right? That meaning is there in dua as well. So dua has both of these meanings in the Arabic as well. So this is very different from ibadah. It's not the same thing as ibadah, right? But of course, they are not mutually exclusive. Somebody could be in ibadah to awliya and also invoke them, right? Invoke them. In either of these cases, and often that will be the case, right? Somebody who's in ibadah to their sect will cite or appeal to the sect, right? He will make dua towards that sect or that sheikh or that imam, and he will cite or appeal to them in arguments for whatever it is. Okay, so that's dua. So, and in the Quran, we have the use of this of dua comes in two phrases, two different phrases. There's the dua to call or invoke others with Allah, okay, and the formatting didn't come out very well here. So there's dua ma'allah, right, with Allah, to call or invoke others with Allah, okay, and then there's also the dua min dunillah, right, to do dua to others min dunillah, yad'una min dunillah. Min dunillah means other than Allah or what is less than Allah. Dun also means less. You can say what's other than or less than, right? So they make dua to what is other than Allah, what is less than Allah. So not Allah at all. So Allah isn't even in the picture. Okay, they're just calling on other than Allah or what is less than Allah. And then there's also the dua ma'allah. So they invoke Allah and others with Him together as partners in that, right? And both are shown to be separate and distinct from shirk in the following verses. So there are a couple of verses where this is shown. Well, it's a set of verses, two sets of verses. So there's this verse in Surah at the end of Surah Yunus, these two verses from 105 to 106, where it says, وَنَقِمْ وَجْهَكَ لِلدِّينِ حَنِيفًا وَلَا تَكُونَنَّ مِنَ الْمُشْرِكِينَ. Right? The command is being said to the Prophet, and direct your face towards the religion, towards the deen, inclining in truth, hanifan, and never be of the mushrikeen, never be of those who associate with Allah. And then it says something else. So that's one thing, don't be of the mushrikeen. That's one. And the next thing is, وَلَا تَدْعُ مِن دُونِ اللَّهِ مَا لَا يَنْفَعُكَ وَلَا يَضُرُّكَ. And do not invoke besides Allah that which neither benefits you nor harms you. And if you do, then indeed you'd be of the wrongdoers. So that shows you that these are two different things, right? There's the command to not be of the mushrikeen, and then وَلَا تَدْعُ مِن دُونِ اللَّهِ مَا لَا يَنْفَعُكَ وَلَا يَضُرُّكَ. And then do not make dua to other than Allah, or to what is less than Allah, right? So they are two different things, right? They're not the same. Shirk is one thing, and dua min dunillah is another thing altogether, okay? And both are made haram, okay? Both, of course, are haram. So I don't want anybody to think when I'm saying that there's these distinctions in the Quran that these other things are not haram. They are haram, but shirk is its own thing, and shirk is the more dangerous. And another set of verses. This is in Surah Al-Hajj. Again, a similar sort of thing. ولا يصدنك عن آيات الله بعد إذ أنزلت إليك وادع إلى ربك ولا تكونن من المشركين. And never let them avert you from the verses of Allah or from the signs of Allah after they have been revealed to you. And invite people to your Lord and never be of the mushrikeen. So again, وَلَا تَكُونَنَّ مِنَ الْمُشْرِكِينَ, and don't be of the mushrikeen. And this time it says, وَلَا تَدْعُوا مَعَ اللَّهِ إِلَهًا آخَرَ, and do not invoke with Allah another deity. So we have both those types of dua, and they're both being shown to be distinct from shirk. Right? In this verse, we have don't be of the mushrikeen, so don't engage in shirk, and وَلَا تَدْعُوا مَعَ اللَّهِ إِلَهًا آخَرَ, and don't invoke with Allah another ilah. لا إله إلا هو كل شيء هالك إلا وجهه له الحكم وإليه ترجعون. Okay, so this one is saying, okay, shirk, you can clearly see this, I hope. I mean, I don't need to say much more, I don't think, I hope. That here we have shirk in opposition, distinct from dua ma'allah, right? And over here, in the verse before that, we have again shirk, distinct and in opposition to, not opposition, but distinct from dua min dunillah. Okay, and that's basically it. That's what I wanted to share with you all today. So let's have a look at, let's get back to, where's the StreamYard tab? There it is. Okay, that's about it. Any questions are welcome, and of course the link as always is in the description, pinned at the top, for anybody who would like to jump on and share something with us. Remember again, these live streams are meant to be for people to come and share their own contemplations as well. Any verse, anything that you want to share, we'd love to hear it. I know it's mostly been me just sharing different things, but it really is, I would like to see more people come on to just share their insights. All right, let's have a look at the comments. We go back a little bit to my assessment. Here we have Assalamu alaikum, Prayas. Excellent to see you again. In my assessment, God has given fujur wa taqwa in humans. If we are using it, speaking kindly to people, fulfilling promises, controlling anger, avoiding gossip, being truthful, that is service to God. Yeah, that is service to God. Ibadah, I mean, the ibadah, I mean, look, the things that you can do in accordance with your fitrah, in accordance with what God has created you with, like you said, with taqwa, which is inspired in the heart of everybody. In fact, فَأَلْهَمَهَا فُجُورَهَا وَتَقْوَاهَا, right? And doing that, that doesn't have to be in ibadah to anybody, right? It doesn't have to be in ibadah to anybody. The whole point of ibadah in the Qur'an is to lead you to taqwa, right? To actually lead you to taqwa. So, in one of the early verses of Surah Al-Baqarah, يَعْبُدُوا رَبَّكُمْ الَّذِي خَلَقَكُمْ وَالَّذِينَ مِنْ قَبْلِكُمْ. Why? لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ, right? So it's not that the taqwa is ibadah, right? It's the ibadah is supposed to lead to taqwa, right? Ibadah to Allah is supposed to make you of the muttaqeen, right? That's the reasoning given in the Quran. يَعْبُدُوا رَبَّكُمْ لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ. Being ibadah to Allah so that you may be people of taqwa, right? And then from taqwa, of course, why should we be people of taqwa? تَقُوا رَبَّكُمْ لَعَلَّكُمْ تَشْكُرُونَ. Being taqwa, have gained taqwa so that you may be of the shakirin, right? Of the shakirin. And shukr is the highest human virtue, which is why shaitan said, to Allah, وَلَا تَجِدُ أَكْثَرُهُمْ شَاكِرِينَ. Right? You'll see what I'll do to humanity. I'll come to them from the front and from behind and from the left and from the right, and you will not find most of them shakirin. Right? You will not find most of them to be in gratitude, in shukr, real shukr. Right? The shukr which is in opposition to kufr. So that's, this is part of that long video essay that I have on my channel, Quranic Islam versus Inherited Islam. It's basically going through those two steps, right? Describing what ibadah is, and then why should we be in ibadah. It's to gain taqwa, and then talking about what taqwa is, and then showing how from taqwa we're supposed to lead us on to shukr, right? That's sort of like the what's called the Quranic aims in the Quran. That's how they're arranged, right? That's how it's arranged. The main aims in the Quran, ibadah. From ibadah you get to taqwa, and from taqwa you get to shukr, and from shukr comes falah, but that's from Allah. It's not from a success, right? So that's what I would say. It's ibadah. It's supposed to take you to taqwa, right? And you can have taqwa without being ibadah to anybody, right? You can have taqwa without being any ibadah to Allah or anybody else, right? Ibadah is about servitude, right? It's about servitude. You could say that you are, serving yourself when you have taqwa in a various way. You're serving your own humanity, right? You're serving your own nature. But in the end, it really is just following that nature, that God-given fitrah nature, which is inside you. Like you said, وَنَفْسٍ مَا سَوَّاهَا فَأَلْهَمَهَا فُجُورَهَا وَتَقْوَاهَا. The human being, the soul, and he who proportioned it or made it balanced and inspired into it, what is taqwa and what is fujur, what is taqwa and what is wickedness. So we all know that. Okay. Assalamu alaikum, Adriana. Good to see you. Hope you're well. I was wondering, since ibadah is being in a state of servitude like a slave to his master, but to God alone, doesn't this prohibit slavery? Since you would be in servitude to those other than God. Yeah, look, slavery is something which is, of course, it shouldn't happen, right? It is haram to enslave anybody, right? And you're not allowed to enslave anybody. The whole thing about slavery, which is in the Quran, it's all about dealing with pre-Islamic slaves, right? When slavery was all over Arabia before Islam came, right? People didn't start enslaving. The Arabs didn't start enslaving each other or other people after Islam arrived. Like there were no slaves before. No, when Islam arrived, when the Prophet arrived, the slaves were already there. And the Quran, when it speaks about slaves, it's talking about the slaves which are already there in the community, right? About a third or half, even up to half, a third, a quarter minimum of the people of Medina were slaves. They were already there, right? And it's all about, the Quran is all about talking about, freeing slaves, and, the whole thing about war captives being enslaved. It's not allowed, of course. The Quran gives only two options, either they are freed or ransomed. There's no enslaving people, right? So, of course, slavery is prohibited, but the problem is that when it's already there in the society, you can't just unilaterally free all of these slaves. In the end, like it or not, before Islam came, the slaves were property, right? People who bought those slaves, they spent money to buy them, and you just come along and free them. All right, you have to compensate. This happened later when the Islamic State became sort of big enough. In Surah At-Tawbah, we have the verse of the sadaqat, which is confused with zakat. It's not zakat, but the verse of the taxes, right? That the taxes are collected, and one of the things that they will be spent on is the freeing of slaves, right? The freeing of slaves, right? That you pay to free the slaves from their owners compensate them. And that's how slavery, most of the slaves in the modern world, right, when slavery was abolished in the modern world, it was mostly done that way. You had to compensate the slave owners. That's what happened in what Great Britain did, for example. There are a lot of wealthy middle class families in the UK now whose wealth has, that they have right now is from slaves that the British government compensated them. The UK only finished paying off its debt for freeing the slaves. The debt mean what debt? Debt as in they paid the slave owners for the slaves to free them. We only finished paying that off in 2015. So until 2015, British taxpayers were actually paying to free slaves, right? Abraham Lincoln, who's very misunderstood if people think that he is a great liberator of slaves. He didn't care about slaves. He was just as racist and white supremacist as everybody else in the 1800s. He actually wanted to send all the African Americans, all the slaves. He wanted to send them all to Africa, and that's why you get the country of Liberia. The country of Liberia was founded by the United States of America as a place to dump all of the slaves, all the black people, basically. So Abraham Lincoln, he didn't care about freeing slaves or not. He cared about preserving the Union. And when he had slaves freed, he compensated the slave owners. He paid them, right? He paid them all. I forget how much it was. It was something like $300 per slave, right? To the slave owners. The slaves, did they get anything? No, didn't get anything. He only offered them $100 if they would leave the United States and go to Liberia, right? So if they would agree to leave and relocate to Africa, he would give them $100. And basically, it was because he was against slavery because he didn't want black and white people living together, because if they lived together, they would mix blood, basically, right? That was his thing. He didn't want black and white people intermarrying, right? So that was his thing. Anyway, got diverted there, but the point is, yes, slavery, of course, it's not nothing. But in a situation where the slavery is already there, right? And you can't forcefully free the slaves without compensating. You don't have anything. The Prophet Muhammad spent most of a large proportion of the time in Medina hungry, right? Him and his family would go hungry for days, right? And his mosque was like a refugee camp. He had so many poor Muslims there, and he would strain to feed them, right? His daughter Fatima would barely get much to eat. Where is he going to free all the slaves? How? And then it would create a problem. If you just mass liberation of all slaves, it creates a problem. If you don't give them some way of living, what are they going to become? The women become prostitutes, and the men become criminals, vagabonds. So it's a complicated situation. Anyway, let me go back up. I didn't check up on any other things there. If there's anybody who had something directed to me, I wish I could know which comments are for me and which ones are for you guys just discussing between yourselves. Assalamu alaikum. Miss you too. Is this for me? How do you understand? I don't know what that says. How do you understand Ribba? I have no idea what that is. I gotta make so much sense. I don't know why so many Muslims figures can't just say that slavery is haram. They all like. No, the problem is because, of course, the Arabs continued slavery after Islam. So after the Prophet passed away, and don't forget the Prophet, he was alive for basically 23 years, right? The Prophet, as a prophet, right? Preaching as a prophet for around 23 years, 13 years in Mecca, where he was, minority and oppressed and all the rest of it, right? When they immigrated to Medina, it was just around 70 families. That's it. That's the only people who believed out of all of Mecca. 2,000 people in Mecca. About 70 families had Muslims in them, and they moved to Medina, right? And in Medina, of course, there was all of the battles and stuff. He only really gained some amount of control over most of Arabia for the last few years only, right? So after the conquest of Mecca, then there was the Battle of Hunain, and there was, of course, Taif still didn't surrender. And eventually, most of Arabia was under his control. But, pretty much as soon as it happened, afterwards he passed away. It's a very short time to permanently change the cultural mindset of a people, right? The Prophet was not there teaching the people in South Arabia or in West Arabia or in all these places. That was supposed to be carried on by the people in Medina, who were supposed to carry on, in the guidance of the Qur'an. But very quickly things went sideways. And so, of course, the Arabs just continued having slaves and enslaving people. So they would take captives, and of course, who were these? These were Sahaba, right? And so that's why the scholars can't say it's haram, because if they said it's haram, they would have to be say that the Sahaba did something wrong, right? Which they won't accept. I mean, it's clearly oppression. I mean, go what? This is the rights which Allah has given them in the Quran, right? The captives of war, that's the right that Allah has given them in the Quran, either to be ransomed or freed. That's their God-given right in the Quran, right? And to say, no, we're not going to do this or this, we're going to enslave them, okay, that's oppression. It's a dhulm. Just even from that kind of angle. Even without looking at that, it clearly just falls under dhulm, under oppression. To go to, of course, they do say that you just go to people who are free and enslave them. That's haram, right? They will say that. The scholars will say that if you just have like some, some free people somewhere, and you just go and attack them and capture them and enslave them, then that's haram. Well, the Muslims actually in the end did that, right? The invasion of most of North Africa. Why did the Muslims invade? They invaded North Africa, the Sahaba, and they captured people and enslaved them. And well, in North Africa, most of North Africa didn't attack the Muslims, right? There was no hostility from them at all. Quite the opposite. In fact, the leader of Egypt had a treaty with the Prophet, right? He drew up a peace agreement with the Prophet. And then when Amr ibn al-As, the quote-unquote Sahabi, great Sahabi, when he got to Al-Arish, the Muqawqas, he sent the Prophet's agreement, the Prophet's peace treaty, he sent it to Amr, saying, what are you doing? Why are you attacking us? Look, this is your Prophet gave us this agreement of safety, right? And we haven't attacked you. Amr just ripped it up. He ripped it up. I mean, literally just ripped up the agreement that the Prophet had given him. So, he didn't care. He didn't care. He wanted Egypt, and that's what happened. That's why he also later on went against Uthman, right? So Uthman, so he was Amr ibn al-As was in charge of Egypt, was the governor of Egypt in a time of he invaded it without Umar's permission. Tore up the letter of al-Muqawqas of the Prophet that was given to al-Muqawqas. He went in there, invaded it, and even now the Egyptians praise him as the great general who brought Islam to Egypt or whatever. And they have the Masjid of Amr ibn al-As. He was a tyrant, hypocrite really. But then he was the governor of Egypt for the rest of Umar's caliphate, and then for a span of Uthman's, and then Uthman took him off, right, and put his sort of foster brother by suckling, and he got really annoyed. Amr ibn al-As got very annoyed, and he was one of the people who instigated against Uthman for people to go out and fight against and sort of like dispose Uthman or kill him or get rid of him, Amr ibn al-As, Aisha, Talha. These were the main movers of people against Uthman, until finally, when he was killed. Then you had the civil, the people in Medina and in Hijaz gave bay'ah to Ali, and then of course Muawiyah, who was doing a lot of things behind the scenes. He refused and wanted, and used the whole issue of Uthman to basically seek the caliphate. And Amr ibn al-As goes to him and says, I will help you, I will support you. He says to Muawiyah, I will support you on the condition that you give me Egypt. Right? That if we win, that I get Egypt. Right? It remains with me, and you are not, and you can't remove me from it. Right? So you had this. He just wanted Egypt. Right? He was just dunya. Okay. Assalamu alaikum, Adam. Hope you all interested in these last two verses. I don't know what do you mean, the two verses on the screen? Sorry. So these two verses which I've put on here. I don't know if you were there for the presentation, but basically I'm showing that shirk, like in this first verse, is distinct from dua min dunillah. Right, so the verse is saying to the Prophet, don't be of the mushrikeen, and then it says, وَلَا تَدْعُ مِن دُونِ اللَّهِ مَا لَا يَنْفَعُكَ وَلَا يَضُرُّكَ, and don't do dua to other than Allah. Right, and in this other verse we have again, don't be of the mushrikeen. Where is it? وَلَا تَكُونَنَّ مِنَ الْمُشْرِكِينَ, and it says, وَلَا تَدْعُ مَعَ اللَّهِ إِلَهًا آخَرَ, and don't make dua to another ilah with Allah. Right, so, and I was explaining beforehand that you have in the Quran these two phrases. You have dua ma'allah, dua with Allah, and dua min dunillah. Right, and these two are usually conflated with shirk. Right, they're usually conflated with shirk, as is ibadah min dunillah. So that's ibadah min dunillah. That's also conflated with shirk. Shirk proper is to be in ibadah with others with Allah. It's basically ibadah ma'allah. There's also I forget his name, the academic, slipped my mind now. Sorry, I'm tired. He's been working on something about shirk as well. He also divides shirk into 4 types, right? 4 streams, but he's still working on that, and he wants to publish regarding it soon. So I don't know if that answered. Oh, scroll up. Okay, hold on. These 2 verses. Says it, obey their master, and yeah. So I mean, yeah, there's a similar sort of thing. So when you're in ibad, if a slave is a Muslim, of course, right, and the his master commands him, to speak the truth, right? Yes, that's still ibadah to Allah, right? When we talk about the ibadah, I mean, to other than Allah, it shows up in when that other thing is commanding things against what Allah is commanding. So Allah commands one thing, right? And this thing which you are in ibadah to commands something else, right? If you are truly in ibadah to this other thing, you will listen to what this other thing or person says, and you will ignore what Allah says, right? But when these 2 commands come at you, one from Allah and one from other than Allah, and you ignore what is from other than Allah, and you accept and you follow what Allah says, then you are in ibadah to Allah. Okay, that's in ibadah to Allah. So there are a lot of things that the Prophet commands or anybody else commands. If they are commanding what Allah already commands and you listen to them, that isn't being in ibadah towards them. Okay, because it's still under the umbrella of you're doing what Allah is commanding you. It shows itself in these other things. That's the whole point of why being ibadah to Allah leads to taqwa, right? اعبدوا ربكم لعلكم تتقون, being ibadah to Allah so that you may gain taqwa, because being ibadah to Allah, Allah is the only one who is not seeking anything from you, right? He doesn't have ulterior motives. When you're in ibadah to Allah, you're in ibadah to what is right, to the truth, to justice. Okay, He is ghaniyun anil alameen, right? But when you're in ibadah to other than Allah, right? This person could be a very good person, whatever. But in the end, there'll be some sort of self-service in there, right? And that could lead to dhulm, it could lead to oppression, it could lead you to do something which you shouldn't do. But being in ibadah to Allah will not lead you to do something which you shouldn't do. So I didn't actually read the whole of this. They wouldn't be in ibadah to them that God has prohibited for. Others are allowed limited obedience. Yes, others are allowed limited obedience. So I didn't actually see what you meant, Adam. Scroll higher. The question starts with the words in these last two verses. Okay, let me try and find it. Here we go. So in these last two verses, wouldn't you say that's Atf al-Khas al-Ham, like you have in a common statement verse, she gets mentioned in a specific changes. No, I wouldn't say that, because what's mentioned here, oops, let me bring it, where is it? Here it is. Right. So what's being mentioned here? You've got this double, right? ولا. So it says ولا تكونن من المشركين ولا تدع من دون الله ما لا ينفعك ولا يضرك فإن فعلت فإنك من الظالمين. Right. So you're now of the ظالمين. Here it says well, don't be of the mushrikeen. Right. What's the grammatical thing for this? I'm not sure, to be honest. But I wouldn't say that this is atf. It's not atf, and it's not one of those things where you mention one thing and you mention a specific type of it, right? It isn't. It isn't that. The shirk is definitely, when it comes to shirk, it's always about ibad. وَنَقِمْ وَجْهَكَ لِلدِّينِ حَنِيفًا وَلَا تَكُونَنَّ مِنَ الْمُشْرِكِينَ. These two are brought as sort of juxtaposition, right? You have this, وَنَقِمْ وَجْهَكَ لِلدِّينِ حَنِيفًا, the opposite of that, right? وَلَا تَكُونَنَّ مِنَ الْمُشْرِكِينَ. And then it says, وَلَا تدعو من دونها ما لا ينفعك ولا يضرك. That's clearly something else. Okay, فإن فعلت فإنك إذا من الظالمين. So these are clearly different things, different commands. ولا تكن من المشركين ولا تدعو مع الله إلها آخر لا إله إلا هو كل شيء هالك إلا وجهه له الحكم وإليه ترجعون. I think, and also I didn't mention this, but this is why I think, for example, here the dua مع الله إله آخر, it's like we said about it means invoke, right? To invoke something, to cite an authority, right? Cite an authority for what? For your hukum, right? And this verse here is saying له الحكم, right? So you shouldn't لا تدعوا مع الله إله آخر. One reason why is because the hukum is all for Allah. له الحكم وإليه ترجعون. Okay, the hukum is for Him, and to Him you will return. So that's what I would say there. Let me see if there's any other questions we have. There's nobody on backstage, by the way, so if anybody would like to come on, feel free. Is Iron Man here? Where is he? Iron Man. Hi, there you are. Assalamu alaikum, Iron Man. Hope you're well. Hello. Yes. Here's another one. ألا نعبد إلا الله ولا نشرك به شيئا ولا يتخذ بعضنا بعضا أربابا من دون الله. Right. So you're saying that this is an example of what we're talking about. Say, ألا نعبد إلا الله ولا نشرك. So this is like the explanation of that. You say, right? ألا نعبد إلا الله ولا نشرك به شيئا. Right? Well, it's exactly. I mean, this is the same as what we were talking about here when we say لا نعبد إلا الله ولا نشرك به. به what? به in his ibadah. Right? لا نعبد إلا الله ولا نشرك به in عبادتهم شيئا ولا يتخذ بعضنا بعضا أربابا من دون الله. Right, so this part here, you mean about the أربابا من دون الله ولا يتخذ بعضنا بعضا أربابا من دون الله. Yeah. So the having arbab min dunillah is one of the things I need to look a bit more into, because it's every time you take a Rabb, does that automatically mean you're in ibadah to that Rabb? Right? I'm not sure about that. There are some verses which seem to me like it isn't the case, and some verses where it does seem like it is the case. Like that's one of the reasons why, for example, Ibn Taymiyyah, he made that division between Tawheed al-Uluhiyyah and Tawheed al-Rububiyyah, right? He said there are some people you can have, they have their Tawheed of Rububiyyah, of the Rabb, but they don't have Tawheed al-Uluhiyyah, right? Or vice versa. You can have Tawheed of your Ilah, but not Tawheed of your Rabb, right? So he makes this distinction and uses some of the verses to talk about that. The common statement, yeah, the common word, yes, the common word verse. Let's talk about it. Understand that to be adding a specific part to a general thing is a warning of relevance dangerous. I mean, when it comes to that verse and specifically, the reason why it's worded like that, because don't forget who is it's addressing, right? It's addressing Ahlul Kitab, right? It's addressing Ahlul Kitab, and Ahlul Kitab are mentioned in other verse as taking, the one whom they took. Who did they take as Arbabu min dunillah was the what's his name, the Ruhban, right? The priests and rabbis, right? The verse where it talks about their kufr, اتخذوا أحبارهم ورهبانهم أربابا من دون الله, right? And then later it says والمسيح ابن مريم. Right, so that's why you have the arbab put there. It's sort of like this sort of a reminder about that. Okay, اتخذوا أحبارهم ورهبانهم أربابا من دون الله والمسيح ابن مريم وما أمروا إلا ليعبدوا إلها واحدا لا إله إلا هو سبحانه عما يشركون. Right, so this again, it's all linked together, and this is all shirk. Right. They're taken of the Ahbar and Ruhban as Arbab min dunillah wal Masih ibn Maryam, and doing what? And then the verse says وَمَا أُمِرُوا إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُوا إِلَهًا وَاحِدًا إِلَّا إِلَهًا وَاحِدًا. So they were in ibadah to those Arbab, right? They were in ibadah to those Arbab, especially them, because the interesting thing about that verse is Al-Masih ibn Maryam is mentioned last, right? It said اتخذوا أحبارهم ورهبانهم أربابا من دون الله. That phrase is complete by itself. They took their rabbis and their priests as lords besides Allah. That statement by itself is complete. And then the other part is added. وَالْمَسِيحِ ibn Maryam, it's almost added as if it's afterthought. It's not that it's afterthought. It's the reason why they could be in it. They might have taken him as Rabb. It's due to their taking the priests and rabbis as arbab first. So they're primary, right? The main type of shirk that goes on with the Ahlul Kitab is the same as ours. It's towards the imams and the priests and the sheikhs and the imams and the rabbis, right? It's because Isa ibn Maryam didn't ask to be worshipped. He didn't command any ibadah towards himself, right? Yeah, he didn't ask any ibadah towards himself. Those who are in ibadah to him are in ibadah to him secondarily, out of being in ibadah to their priests and rabbis. So it comes in that kind of way, I think. Let's see what else we have. Raya's got something here to say. There's somebody. Okay, I'll bring you on in a minute. A second. Also, one thing I really feel Arab skeptical is the Arab conquest of the Persian Egypt. I just feel that was a violation of Quran. Yeah, most of the most of the conquests were, quote unquote, illegal according to the Quran. All right, let me bring on. We have here all religion. Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum assalam, brother. How are you doing, brother?
I'm good. How have you been?
Good, sir, good. Uh, I have a question all the time. Muslims say Hindu do shirk, Christian do shirk. Uh,
Hmm.
I don't feel Hindu does shirk and the Christian also don't do because you know they don't know the meaning of shirk. Hindu does not know the meaning of shirk. In their
Hmm.
in their holy book, shirk, there is no such thing as a shirk. So how
Hmm.
can Allah just tell them they are doing the shirk, when they have no law about the shirk, also about the Christian. Uh,
Hmm.
they don't know what is the meaning of shirk. Is only the Muslim who knows the meaning of shirk,
Hmm.
associating with God. So I feel they do not do shirk. The shirk only done by the Muslim. Only can Muslim do the shirk, because we know and we understand because of the Quran, we understand the meaning of shirk. So I feel only Muslim can do shirk. uh, if we
Hmm.
if we ask for help other than Allah, like a lot of Muslim who ask for help, like Ali and the graveyards,
Hmm.
the Maulanas, so we ask for help other than Allah. That's what that means shirk. You doing the shirk because there is a helper beside Allah. That means you doing the shirk. So what do you think? In my opinion about my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, what you said there is exactly what I was trying to actually clarify here, which is that, like what you said, that somebody who says, "Yeah, Ali," or Abdul Qadir Jilani, right?
Yeah,
These sort of things. That this isn't shirk. This is du'a, du'a min dunillah, right? Du'a min duni. In the Quran, what I was trying to highlight in this presentation is that there's a difference between shirk and dua ma'allah or min dunillah, right? That in the Quran Allah talks about dua ma'allah and dua min dunillah. They're both still haram, but they are not the same as shirk. Shirk is only about ibadah. It's only about servitude, right? So that the calling, people calling others on other than Allah, invoking other than Allah, all of that isn't shirk. It isn't
it's not
shirk.
shirk.
No, it's not shirk. This is in the Quran, it's called dua ma'allah or dua min dunillah. It's distinct from shirk, right?
What is the shirk?
Shirk is to be in ibadah to other than Allah, right?
I
Ibadah.
mean, ibadah is the same equal to asking for them help and
No,
thanking
no,
them. It's not shirk.
no. So, for example, salah is not ibadah. Salah is not ibadah. Salah is a ritual that you do. Like, for example, in the verse of when Allah speaks to Musa, yeah, He says, فَاعْبُدْنِي وَأَقِيمِ الصَّلَاةِ لِذِكْرِي, right? Be in ibadah to me and establish salah for my dhikr, right? So ibadah and salah, they're different. They're not the same thing, right? Ibadah in the Quran, the similitude that's given for shirk in the Quran, the method, the example, is about like a man who has two different men, two different servants, slaves. One who has only one master, and another slave who has many masters. Okay, that's the example that's given of what shirk is, right? It's exactly what it comes from. The word abd in Arabic means a slave, right? Abd, right?
Yeah.
So shirk is for you to be like a slave to others with Allah, to Allah and then others with Allah. That you share out your servitude, that you share your ibadah to Allah and other than Allah, to others with Allah, that you have many masters. Okay, that is
Yeah.
shirk. Yeah.
When you asking somebody help, you saying that's not a shirk.
Yeah, in the Quran, it's called dua ma'allah or dua min dunillah. right? So they're both still haram, and it's mentioned in the Quran, but it's not shirk, which is why Allah says He forgives it, but He doesn't forgive shirk, right? So you have the verse in, I think it's in the Surah of Furqan, where it talks about those who who make who do du'a Allah, make du'a to others than Allah or others with Allah. And then it talks about how whoever does that, they will be punished, etc. That that it's haram, but then it says that they can be forgiven. Okay, إلا من تاب وآمن وعمل عملا صالحا, except he who repents and does good deeds and etc. Right? So if you repent from that, you'll be forgiven. But shirk is never forgiven. Okay, shirk is never forgiven. Okay, dua min dunillah, dua ma Allah, these things can be forgiven. Shirk is not forgiven.
If I say Ali can help me, Ali can save me from hell, Ali can give me money, Ali can give me child, that's
Yeah.
not shirk.
No, that's dua. That's, well, if you say, that's not even a dua to be honest, because you're not calling on him. But if you believe that, for example, yeah, let's say somebody believes that Ali or Abdul Qadir Jailani or some wali or somebody can do all these miracles for them, change, do all these kind of things, then that's in the Quran. That's just stupidity, right? In the Quran,
And,
it's just one of those superstitions the Quran speaks against,
but
right? It talks about it.
that's what the Meccan used to do, shirk. They
Yeah,
ask for the,
the Meccans used to do shirk, but that wasn't the main. That's not what the Quran is talking about. That's why it doesn't even mention hardly any idols in the Quran, right?
but they are mushrik who do
Yeah.
shirk. Mushrik
And
means
mushrik,
those
yeah,
who do shirk.
yeah, it's those who are in ibadah to others with Allah. The main shirk in the Quran, the main shirk is towards people, right? It's to be in
Towards people.
ibadah. Yeah, it's to be in ibadah towards people. That
No,
no matter.
how can you be ibadah in toward the people?
Well, by being completely subservient and obedient to whatever they tell you to do. So, for example, right? Let's say now you have, like in Mecca, for example, right? They would the leaders of the leaders of people would tell them that you should bury your daughters alive, right? The leaders of people will tell them you should do this or this, right? That this kind of zina is okay, that this marriage is not allowed. They would, if, for example, they knew about the sacred months. They knew that there's certain times of the year that you shouldn't be fighting, right? So they would say, no, you can fight, right? So in all of these, in listening to them, in being obedient to them, being like a slave to them, that whatever they tell you, you do, that's ibadah, that's shirk, right? It's to be in that kind of way, to be completely obedient, subservient, to be just like a slave,
No,
right?
but they are not saying if even if they do something, they are not saying they have a power to do something. That's
It
not a
does
shirk.
not,
It's
yeah,
not association with the Allah.
yeah, that's got that's what I'm saying. That's the wrong idea of shirk. This idea that it's about association with Allah, that it's about the attributes of Allah. It's got nothing to do with shirk. It's only about ibadah, and that's why it's so dangerous. That's why it's so dangerous. That's why it's such a bad thing, because when you have people being in ibadah to other people other than Allah, okay, these other people other than Allah can command you to do anything. They can tell you to kill, to steal, to attack, to not attack. They can tell you to do anything, right? And you will worship them. You will do what they say,
No,
right?
but
When the
that's
Quran talks about ibadat shaitan, what do you think that means? Is the Quran talks about how people will be in ibadat shaitan. Most people, you don't see people thinking that shaitan has the powers of Allah, or that people calling on shaitan, all of this. But Allah says in the Quran, وَلَقَدْ ضَلَّ مِنْكُمْ جِبِلًّا كَثِيرًا. Right? He says, أَلَمْ أَحَدِ إِلَيْكُمْ يَا بَنِي آدَمْ أَلَّا تَعْبُدُوا الشَّيْطَانَ. On the day of judgment, Allah will say, did I not tell you, O mankind, that you should not be in ibadah to shaitan? Okay? And then it says, and he has, taken away most of you, right? لَقَدْ ضَلَّ مِنْكُمْ جِبِلًّا كَثِيرًا. The ibadah to shaitan isn't about, calling on him, asking him to give you a son or to give you money or any of these things. The ibadah to shaitan is to be to do to carry out what he wants, right? To be like a servant to his wants, right?
Yeah. Uh,
To his
I,
holy.
if I worship idol, a Hindu idol, am
Yeah.
I doing shirk or no?
You're doing it if you've done it because somebody told you to. So, example, somebody told you worship this idol, right?
No, no. I just follow. I just follow my own instincts. I go and worship. I'm not doing shirk,
Yeah, no, that's just stupid in the Quran. That's just stupidity.
so it's not shirk.
Quran,
If I
no,
say, uh, if
no,
I
it's
say,
just stupidity.
yeah,
Yeah,
Krishna.
it's just being silly. The Quran talks about that. Talks about worship of idols, as in like stone, wooden idols. What does it say? In hiya illa asma'un sammaytumuha antum wa aba'ukum. These are just names that you've named. These idols, you've just named them.
So,
ما أنزل الله بها من سلطان إن يتبعون إلا الظن وما تهوى الأنفس. Right? They're only following conjecture and what their and what their inner desire, sort of their desires want. Okay, but it doesn't talk about it as being shirk. Shirk is, for example, though, let's say somebody does that and he tells other people to do it, right? And those other people decide, they think, okay, that's stupid. Why should I worship this idol, right? It's just an inanimate thing. Why should I do it? But then they do it because the person told them to do it. That's shirk. Okay, that's now ibadah, right?
if
So
I
say
do by
and
my
now,
own will, if I do by my own will, then it's not a shirk. If somebody who told me to do it, then it will become a shirk.
yeah, basically ibadah. Shirk is about ibadah. So, for example, idol. The idol doesn't tell you to worship it, right? A Hindu idol doesn't say to you, "Hey, you come, worship me, bow down to me." It doesn't do that, right? It doesn't do that. Okay, it hasn't made you into a slave, right? You've just done something stupid on your own. Um, but then the problem is you've started doing that, and then you will tell other people to do it, and then they do it, and then other people, and then you get this thing. That's what idol worship becomes shirk because it's people obeying what other people tell them to do. And then what will happen is, of course, you have priests for these idols, right? And they will say that these idols command you to do this. Of course, idols don't command anything, right? But they will say, this great idol, Hindu idol says that you should, for example, pay this much money to the temple every month. Okay, and then people start doing that, right? And it says, okay, this idol is telling that you should sacrifice, this many goats to the temple and to the priests, right? And of course, idol's not saying that. Who's saying that? The people, right? The idols don't talk, they don't do anything, they don't command, they don't think. Which is why when the Quran talks about how Allah will throw the mushrikeen and what they used to worship in hell, what they used to worship, what they were in ibadah to, are people. They're not. Allah's not going to resurrect the idols, the Hindu idols or Hubal or Lat or Uzza. He's not going to resurrect them and throw them into hell, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
they're just inanimate objects.
You know, the shirk in the Quran described is like a uh, the mushrik. They believe in God. Okay, they believe in Allah.
Yeah.
But the idol in the Kaaba, they said they help them, like having a boy child.
No.
Idol help them to bring the boy child or making rain. You know,
No,
uh,
that doesn't.
the,
Quite the opposite. In the Quran, they all admit that Allah is the one who brings the rain, right?
no,
And
no,
in the Quran, and it's true. And in the Quran, when it talks about the mushrikeen, that when when they have when the wife gets pregnant, and says, and then they make du'a to Allah, oh Allah, oh Allah, if you give us a salih, we will be grateful, right? If you give us a good child, we'll be grateful. So they're making dua to Allah, right? They're not making dua to the idols to give them a good son or good child. They're saying, and they're making dua to Allah. And then what happens? Once the child is born, ja'ala shuraka. Said once the child is born, they make others a sharik in the child. How do they do that? By then saying, we you should basically raising the child to be in ibadat other than Allah, right? That you must listen to the chief of the tribe, to the sheikh of Bani Makhzum or Bani Umayyah or Bani Hashim. You have to listen to them. You have to obey them. Okay, they make them they make the child a mushrik in that kind of way. Okay, they don't say, this child has come to us from Allah. We made dua for Allah to give us this child. We have this child, and they tell the child to be in ibadah only to Allah. They don't tell them that. They tell the child, listen and obey your elders, listen and follow the way of your forefathers, listen and follow the chief of your tribe, etc. That sort of thing. But look, I mean, look it up. Look at the mushrikeen in the Quran. For example, when they go to the boat, right? It's mentioned a lot in the Quran that when they go into the sea, right, and then when the waves become choppy and they become afraid, who do they make dua to? They don't make dua to an idol because they think an idol will help them. They make dua to Allah, right? To Allah, only Allah. And they say, Allah, if you help us, we will be of the shakirin. We'll be grateful. But then they go back to the land, and then what are they? They are back to being in ibadat other than Allah, to be in servitude to other than Allah, to be in servitude to their tribe, to their nationalism, to their patriotism, to their leaders, to their forefathers, to their culture, to all of these things. They are now just in service to those things. Right?
Those are not a shirk. To be obedient to the leader and patriotic nationalist. These are not a shirk. Shirk
It is.
only.
That's the main shirk in the Quran.
No,
The
no.
majority of the shirk in the Quran is towards people, towards that
Shirk,
sort of thing.
brother, shirk means when you believe in Allah and there is someone other than Allah, He also help us.
No, no.
That's what it means, shirk. But shirk is not. I'm patriotic. I'm nationalist. These are not a shirk. It's
Like
maybe
for example,
stupid.
there's this funny it's not funny, but there was this movie, famous movie with what's the name, Tom Cruise, right? Where they're in the army, and what all the people in the army told, they're told they have a chain, a code, a chain of command. What's the chain of command? Unit, core, God, country. That's who do you defer to? Who's above you? Your unit, right? In the army, your unit and your unit leader. And then the core, right? The bigger group. And then who is above that? God. And who is above God? The country. The country is above God, right? My country, right or wrong, right? I want my country to be right, but my country, right or wrong, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter about God, about this. No, I will be in ibadah to my country. I will serve my country. Doesn't matter if God is commanding this or not this. He's telling me not to do this or to do it, right? Don't go to war in Iraq, right? God doesn't want that. No, but my country wants it. I will be in servitude to my country. I will go over there and I will fight, and that's ibadah. Okay, that is ibadah. And that's why shirk is so evil. The thing about I'm going to worship an idol. So what? Let somebody worship an idol. What does that do? What great evil is that? Somebody calling on a stone wooden idol to give me children. Okay, let him. So what?
No, no.
What's the big evil in that?
No, there is a big evil in those worshipping something who cannot help you. If there is no guidance, it doesn't give you any guidance. You reject the truth and you follow the one idol, and you have no guidance from that idol, and
So what? So what? What does it do?
you
It
could
doesn't
do
help.
anything. There
It
is no
doesn't do anything.
provision.
Exactly.
You
Exactly. It
see,
doesn't do anything.
yeah,
Doesn't do a single thing.
no,
But but
that's the problem. That's the problem. You have nothing. You can do anything you want. If you follow the idol and you have no guidance from that idol, and then you can do whatever feels like doing. Enjoy your life and having
okay,
multiple.
so somebody without an idol can do the same.
What?
The idol doesn't change anything. Somebody who
What's it?
doesn't have any idol, He doesn't have anything, nothing.
The,
Okay, so he's
the,
not worshiping any
but there
idol.
is a guidance. You have a guidance,
No, somebody, let's say
do
somebody
and
without,
don'ts.
no, let's say somebody without any guidance, right? And no idol. Okay, what's the difference between him and somebody with an idol? Nothing. Look, shirk is when Allah says, "Inna Allah la yaghfir an yushrika bihi shay'an." Allah does not forgive that you should be in shirk with Him. You know, to do shirk with Him, right? That you should associate with Him and anything in His ibadah. La yushrik bihi. It's a big thing, right? When Allah says there's something that He's not going to forgive, right? It's because it's a very dangerous thing. It's not something which is sort of like somebody can do in his room, and that's it, and nothing will come of it, right? Somebody who just worships an idol in a room, or bows down to a idol, it doesn't change it. It doesn't do anything. It's just stupidity. It's just bowing to something which is inanimate and doesn't do anything.
Uh,
Doesn't
If I have
change.
a if I have a leader,
Yeah.
political leader, am I doing shirk?
If, for example, let me give you an example then, right? The leader tells you, right, the Prophet said that you should kill all Hindus.
No, no, no.
Okay.
That's not a. I'm saying a political leader. I follow him. It's nothing to do about religion.
Yeah. No. Of course not. Of course not. But again, if he tells you to do something which Allah has commanded you shouldn't do, and then you listen to him, yes, that's shirk. Understand?
Allah.
So Allah commands you not to do something, and this leader tells you do it. If you do it, that's shirk.
That's not shirk. That's just.
It is shirk. It is shirk. Because Allah commanded you don't. He said no. The leader said yes, and you listen to him. Who are you serving? Who is your master? You are an abd to who? To Allah or to the leader?
I am just being wrong. I'm
No,
following,
no,
but
no,
not
not
the
at all.
shirk I am doing.
No, that's shirk. That is exactly shirk. That is exactly what shirk is. So Allah is commanding you. You're saying He's your master. He says no. That somebody else says yes, and you listen to that person who says yes. That's why it's evil. That's why it's a problem. Because Allah tells you no about what is just. Right? He says you don't do this thing because it's haram. Why is it haram? It's unjust. You'll find in the end it's not right. It's a wrong thing to do. And then this person tells you do it, the opposite of what Allah says, and it must be something evil because it's opposite, and you listen, that is shirk.
There
That
is a
causes all manner. Yeah,
yeah.
that's exactly what it is.
There is a Allah said, do not associate Allah with somebody else in the
Yeah,
same
yeah.
ayat.
In your ibadah,
No,
right? That's what it's about. That's what the verse. I mean, I mentioned this I don't know if you were here for the beginning of this presentation, but when we're talking about shirk in the beginning, right? It said the key verse to understand what shirk is. It's about ibadah. Okay, it says, "من كان يرجو لقاء ربه فليعمل عملا صالحا ولا يشرك بعبادة ربه أحدا." And to not do shirk in the servitude of his Lord anybody else. Right? Do not do shirk. Do not partner out your ibadah to your Lord to anybody else. Right? There should be a category above everybody else that you are an ibadah to Allah, and that's it. When Allah, this is what Allah commands. This is what He wants. That is what I will serve. Anything which is conforming to that, I can also serve, no problem. Anybody who is commanding to what Allah commands, I can obey. Right? But then when Allah tells you to do something or to don't do something, and then you instead somebody else is saying something else, and you give that servitude to this other thing, that is shirk. Right? That is what shirk is about. Shirk is all about ibadah. Next time you read through the Quran, okay, just look out for it. You'll find whenever the word shirk is coming up, you'll find that it will be attached to ibadah. You'll find it will be attached to ibadah.
okay. Brother, mushrik, what make them mushrik?
Ibadah.
They, they, they,
Ibadah, yeah.
they were not following a leader, but they are following, worshipping the idol.
No, that isn't
Uh,
what made them mushrik. So why would they worship the idol? They worship the idol because others told them to worship the idol, right? No, did any idol ever say, worship me? Has
but
any idol ever said, please come here, worship me? No. The people who worship and defend the idols, they don't do it because out of ibadah to the idols, right? They do it ultimately out of ibadah to those who told them to defend and worship the idols.
if
So it
listen,
comes back to
if nobody told me to worship idol, and
Mhm.
I just watch people worshiping idol, and I go worship idol, I'm doing shirk, yeah, or I'm not doing shirk because nobody
If
tell me
you
to
just
do shirk.
if you just copied somebody,
Uh-huh.
you just see some people doing it and you just copied it.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's again that's just stupidity on your part. Why just
So,
copy
but it's
something?
not shirk.
No, it's not shirk. I mean, you could say it's a shirk in terms of like you're worshiping the sort of the trend,
So
right?
everybody worship idol not because they told somebody. They just follow their parents. They
Yeah, yeah.
follow
Their
the parents.
parents,
So
exactly. Their parents, no, their parents would tell them, right? This is what we do. This is how we live,
no,
and
they
you
don't.
follow that.
They take their children to temple. They worship over there. They do not tell them to worship idol.
Yeah, of course you do.
Parent,
If your parents are taking you to the temple, right? Why are they taking? They're telling you to worship it. They might even if they don't have to actually say, "Hey, you worship this idol," right? You're still following what they're telling you to do, right?
they
You're still
join it.
following what they tell you to do. And in any case, when a child is young and they're just doing this and thing, I mean the worship of the idols itself, right? So when you talk about shirk, and you talk about the shirk towards the idols itself, that's like the least harmful form of shirk. If if a mushrik was did nothing other than worship an idol, then that's almost nothing, right? If they did nothing other than bow down to an idol, okay, right? They're doing something which is shirk because they would they've been if they know that Allah has commanded them not to, of course, because shirk is about ibadah, with Allah. So you know who Allah is, and you know that this is there's ibadah to Allah and there's ibadah to other than Allah, right? And you know that Allah is asking for ibadah to Himself alone, right? Uh, then it's a problem. But you know, somebody telling you to worship an idol, right? Okay, they tell you to worship an idol. You worship an idol. It doesn't really go beyond that, right? It's one of the least, the small. It's like the first step of shirk, right? It's like the least form of shirk.
You
Right,
know,
worship an idol is not it's nothing. Let's say somebody, right, a mushrik, right, is being commanded by his parents or his priest or whatever to worship an idol. Okay, let's say that. But he's also being commanded to always speak the truth, to be good to his parents, to be charitable, to to never lie, to not to cheat, not to steal, not to fornicate, right? To get to be humble, to be patient, to all of the virtues, right? Everything which they command, which Allah is commanding people to be. But the only thing he's doing is bowing down what 2 times a day or whatever it is to inanimate thing. That's almost nothing. Okay, what will happen is that this thing, this action of his, okay, we will not be forgiven. It will not be forgiven, right? His doing this will not be forgiven, right? Which is why Allah says in the Quran, it doesn't say that He will not forgive mushrikeen, right? It says, "Inna Allah la yaghfiru an yushraka bihi," right? That any shirk that you do on the day of judgment, whether you're a Muslim or non-Muslim, right? Any shirk that you come with on the day of judgment, it will be on the scales. It will not be forgiven. It will always be weighed, right? Other things can be forgiven. In fact, other things can be swapped. The good deeds for the bad deeds for the good, except shirk. Shirk will always be there in the scales of judgment day.
shirk also can be forgiven if you repent. and
No, no,
do not
no,
give again.
no, no.
No, no, no.
Allah says clearly, "Inna Allah la yaghfiru an yushrika bihi." Allah does not forgive that any shirk be done on Him. The problem is, like I said, it comes back to understanding what shirk is really, right?
No,
The people who think that shirk can be forgiven, it's because they think like what you're saying, that it just means bowing to an idol and these kind of things. No, shirk is not forgiven.
no, because the mushrik, they do shirk, right?
Yeah,
Okay. The Sahaba they were mushrik. They used to do shirk, correct?
yeah, yes,
Then they stopped doing shirk.
yes.
Then Allah forgive them, correct?
No, who said that Allah forgave their shirk?
You mean the Sahaba they all go to hell?
No, no, of course not. I'm not saying that. But the shirk that they did was not going to be is not going to be forgiven, right? It's not forgiven. There's this thing that people think that you become a Muslim and all your past sins are forgiven, right? That is not from the Quran, right? Becoming a Muslim is a tawbah. To become a Muslim means you're making tawbah, right? You are changing, right? You are changing. Anything which you did in the past which involves other people, you have to go. You have to, for example, if you stole something and then you become Muslim, you still have to give that thing back, right?
Yeah,
You're not forgiven for the any oppression you did in the past. You have to make amends, right?
yeah.
Becoming a Muslim doesn't make you, as people think that you just become Muslim, say the shahada and that's it. No, right? So the shirk which is done in the past, right? Any shirk which you've done in the past, it will be there on the day of judgment, right? So mushrik, or somebody who is a mushrik and then becomes a Muslim, um, and when you talk about the shirk, it's the actions which are attached to it, right? So we said shirk is about the ibadah, the state of ibadah, right? Ibadah to others with Allah. So the actions which you do, the bad actions which you do, which are in shirk, they will not be forgiven. Somebody, for example, could steal because they just decided to steal, right? Because they wanted something, they stole something. That can be forgiven. Somebody else, he doesn't want to steal, right? He doesn't want to steal, but somebody else is telling him go and steal, right? Somebody else who he is in ibadah towards is telling him, I want you to go and steal this, right? The person knows it's wrong. He doesn't want to do it, but he does it anyway. He does it out of this servitude to this other person. That act of theft, that part, what he's doing there, that shirk part there, that will not be forgiven.
So you saying the mushrik who became a Muslim, they will not be forgiven.
No, the mushrikeen can be forgiven, but shirk is not. The acts of
But the
shirk, the acts you do in shirk are not forgiven. Acts
mushrik,
of shirk,
yeah,
yeah.
the mushrik itself mean those who used to do shirk, they do shirk,
Yeah,
and then they became a Muslim.
yeah. I mean, look, for example, a Muslim, it doesn't mean it's a person who would or everything he does is just acts of Islam. A mu'min doesn't mean everything he does is acts of iman, right? When you say Muslim or mu'min, we're talking, it's like a religious label, right? A religious label. So you talk about a mu'min, who is a person who is predominantly the acts of iman, right? The Quran, you have الذين آمنوا and you have المؤمنين. You have الذين كفروا, right, and الكافرين. You have الذين أشركوا and المشركين. And what it seems is that when you talk about it as الذين آمنوا, الذين أشركوا, الذين كفروا, right? That's like it's a preponderance of shirk, of kufr, of iman, of nifaq, whatever it's being talked about. And then the complete name, mushrik, Muslim, mu'min, that is somebody who's sort of like, that's his state. His state is one of where he's going to be in ibadah to others, right? So a mushrik is somebody who is that's his state. His state is he's a person who is abd, he's become an abd to others with Allah, right? And that state can change. Okay, somebody can be like a slave. Somebody can be a slave to somebody else. That doesn't mean he's always doing something, right? Person who is a
Yeah,
slave to somebody is just a slave. Maybe he's a slave and he's never been told to do anything, right? A slave
yeah,
can be maybe like not done any actions. Somebody can be a slave and their master has never commanded them to do anything at all. Okay, it doesn't mean that everything they do now is an act of shirk. A slave eating isn't an act of shirk. A slave going to the bathroom isn't an act of shirk, right? A slave, I don't
You
know.
go in bathroom also shirk?
No, I said it's not, right?
Oh, okay,
So a
okay.
slave, if you had a slave, right? Not every single action he does is a form of servitude towards you, right? Is in service to you. Not everything he does. The things he does in servitude to you, right? Those are acts of servitude, right? Those are acts of ibadah.
Yeah, but
He's
I have to obey my boss. I'm doing the shirk.
No, again, look, when we talk about we're talking about shirk is about ibadah to others with Allah. What does that mean? It means when Allah has got a set of commands, there are certain things which you understand that He wants or He doesn't want you to do. Okay, so when Allah commands you something, and somebody else is commanding you something else, your boss. So you are, and if you say you are in a state of ibadah to your boss, we can see it if you are or not. Are you a mushrik towards your boss or not? How do we know that? We know that because how do we test that? We test that by seeing that when your boss commands you something which is against what Allah is commanding, will you listen to your boss or will you not? Okay,
Mhm.
will you listen to your boss or will you not? Okay,
Yeah.
now the boss might be a bit of a difficult situation because maybe, okay, he will tell you to do something which is haram and you are worried that you will lose your money, he will fire you, he will do this. Okay, so that's not this exactly the same thing because you are not free with your boss, and it's sort of like a job, it's a livelihood. The mushrik is somebody who, of their own free will, okay, it's not being forced in any way by finance or by anything. He is himself has this devotion to something other than Allah, right? The easiest way to understand that is to think of it as it is in really, right? It's towards, like, for example, a sheikh or a scholar or somebody like that, right? So you can have somebody, for example, a Muslim, who has this intense devotion. He's completely devoted to, for example, let's say Imam Malik, right? Imam Malik is his sheikh, is his scholar. He believes in his madhab. He believes he's the greatest of the four imams, and what he says, that's what he wants to follow. So he has this reverence towards Imam Malik. Okay, then he sees that Imam Malik, for example, says that for example, the simple one, killing apostates. That Imam Malik says apostates should be killed. Religious apostates should be killed. Okay? Out of reverence towards Imam Malik, he will go through that. He will follow that. Right? That is what Imam Malik says, that is what I will do. It's not Imam Malik is not his boss. He can't fire him. He can't, take away his rizq or anything like that. He just has this devotion to Imam Malik, and Imam Malik says this is what I think is true, this is what I will do. But he also knows that Allah has said no, that there's religious freedom, that apostates shouldn't be killed. He can see that clearly in the Quran, right?
Yeah.
He sees that as obvious, okay? But instead of listening to Allah, he says, no, my devotion towards Imam Malik and this, I'm going to follow Imam Malik on that. Okay, that is the shirk that we're talking about. Do you understand?
Uh,
Okay,
yeah.
this is this sort of ibadah.
I do have some people who I respect, who I believe to be they have a good knowledge of Islam.
Yeah.
If I do that, I'm making shirk, doing shirk.
Only if they command to what Allah has what you see clearly that Allah has commanded one thing, but you still your reverence or your respect or your adoration for them outweighs that, right? So they're like partners of Allah, right? The Sharia is what Allah says and what they say. If that is true for you, yes, that's shirk. If the Sharia is what Allah says and what they say together, same level, yes, that's shirk.
No, no, it's just an understanding of the Quran.
Yeah, I
You
know,
know,
I
it's that
know, I know what you mean.
you
I,
need a
I,
teacher. You need a teacher.
I know what you mean. I know. That's
So
fine.
because
Yes,
it's not everybody can understand Quran. You need a
exactly.
teacher who can understand. You know,
Exactly. That's fine. That's
if
fine.
following them, you doing shirk.
That's what I'm trying to help you to understand. Okay, so you're talking about this kind of levels, right? So this person who you respect and you take knowledge from, that's not shirk, of course not. But there will come a point, especially if they are, if they are like the majority of scholars now, right? There will come a point where they will say something, right? And because unfortunately, a lot of things are not in accordance with the Quran, right? They will say one thing, and Allah is saying something else, and you will have to choose. There will come this point where you'll see clearly Allah says one thing, they say something else, and you have to decide. Okay?
Yeah, yeah,
Then we see is it that you're going to them really because you want knowledge, or you're going to them really because you revere them.
yeah, yeah.
Okay?
I
That
know.
that's that's the that's the place where you see the difference.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay?
I know Muslim blindly devote to their imams. You know, I do not believe in imams or a sect anything like that. I
Yes,
do
I
believe in
understand you do.
hadith. I
Yes, I
do believe
understand.
in hadith. I do respect something they say because they can teach us something. You know, I don't understand. It's not possible
Yes,
to.
yes.
It's not
Yes, of
possible.
course.
Gee.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
the same with me. I have people I respect as well who I listen to and go to, but the idea is just about where does where is your reverence? What is your greatest reverence for? Right? Do you always have it that Allah is above these people, or is it sometimes know that these people are with Allah and they get to decide and change what Allah is saying, and they get to mitigate or um, um, make conditions on Allah, right?
yeah,
Is that what happens, right? So if you are
yeah.
somebody who allows them to be at that same level with Allah, okay, that's
Yeah, yeah.
shirk, right?
There is a ayat in the Quran about the Jew. They make their rabbi Lord. You know.
Yeah, exactly. So, for
Yeah,
example, verse we mentioned earlier, that when it's talking about the rabbis and the priests,
uh-huh.
اتخذوا أحبارهم ورهبانهم أربابا من دون الله. That they took their priests and rabbis as
Yeah, yeah,
lords with Allah. They took
yeah,
them as lords of Allah, right?
yeah,
Yeah, they're that shirk, right? And even their worship, quote unquote worship of Isa, was because of that, right? Isa never said worship me, but they told people to worship Isa,
yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah,
The priests and the rabbis told people to worship Isa. So even their worship of Isa isn't really shirk towards Isa, it's shirk towards those people, towards the priests and the rabbis.
yeah. But I still feel shirk is a very special type of thing. You associate thing with Allah. It means Allah and some other person can help me in the day of judgment. You know.
Yeah,
So
that's what that's what's popular. I understand that that's what's popular. That's what's been popularized most. That shirk is any this kind of association of Allah with His attributes. That if Allah, if you say something else has attributes similar to Allah, then that is shirk. But from what I see in the Quran, it's not right. Um, that what shirk is really, it's about ibadah, it's about your servitude, it's about what where your reverence is, how easily you are for Allah to command you, to tell you to do this and you will do, tell you don't do this and don't do, and then you make somebody else who just as easily can command you, right?
yeah, yeah,
Then you have, now you are like a mushrik because you've made somebody else have that same has that same power or control over you, right?
yeah,
Right?
yeah,
Just like a slave is supposed to have only one master. Only one master can command the slave in that level, in that certain way, right?
yeah,
If somebody else can, well, if the slave allows somebody else to also command him in that same level, then that slave he's got two masters, right?
yeah,
And that's shirk, right? If he allows somebody else to command him in that same way that his one master should be able to, then he's shared out his ibadah, the slave has shared out his servitude between many lords, right? That is what shirk comes down to.
Yeah,
Oh,
Muslim majority of Muslim, they devoutly follow their imams. They belong to so imam. Hanafi,
yeah,
Shafi, Maliki.
yeah,
They are very uh, fundamentally follow their teaching.
yeah. Mm.
So I feel that
يحبونهم
is wrong.
كحب الله,
I feel,
right?
yeah, I feel those things are wrong to follow them. But we don't have any. I don't have any. To invent my own theory.
No,
I
look,
do.
it's fine to follow. It's fine to follow, right? It's just you should always have it in your mind that you are like what you're saying. You are following them because you want to gain knowledge, right?
Yeah,
If you should not allow your reverence or your following of
yeah,
them or
yeah,
your devotion to them to
yeah,
become
yeah,
so
yeah, yeah,
strong that it
yeah, yeah.
becomes to this level that now when
Yeah.
something becomes clear to you that Allah is saying something else,
Even you
you
reject the
become
Quran.
conflicted.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Some people reject the Quran and follow their imams.
yeah,
That's,
yeah, yeah. Similar
so
to
yeah,
that sort of thing. Okay. All
yeah.
right. There's somebody else here who wants to come on. Sorry, I've kept them so long.
Okay, thank you,
Um,
brother. I appreciate for your
no
lesson.
problem. No problem. Anytime. Barakallah feek. Assalamu alaikum. Assalamu alaikum. Aslam. Hope you're well.
Yes, I'm well. Walaikum assalam. Is my voice audible?
Yes, yes, I can hear you very well.
Okay. Thank you so much. So, a couple of points in regards to this. Now, in regards to, I just wanted to share about people of other faith. Now, there are two aspects. One
Hmm.
is people who follow just a tradition. They may not
Hmm.
necessarily have an aspect of, okay, I am associating this with God, I am associating that philosophical. No, they will not have, because there are 7 million human beings in this
Yeah.
world. Not all people, maybe, for example, if you go to Japan, there are many people in youngsters, they just follow tradition. I mean,
Yeah.
and it not necessarily they have a philosophical understanding, they're associating divinity, this thing, and all. But when you associate, I feel that shirk aspect associating is, as you rightly said, the servitude aspect. If you see,
Hmm.
let's say, for example, when Hitler promoted that thing, we are dominant and this thing. So the society people, they stopped using their mind intellect, and that's why Quran mentions that there is a the hearing, there is intellect, there is a deafness,
Hmm.
something like that is mentioned. So they
Hmm.
started. If you see that they started, I mean, massacring the Jewish people and all. So that is an
Hmm.
aspect of ibadah. Do you agree with that?
Um, So, I mean, one thing that the previous person he said, or somebody else, I forget, maybe it was a comment,
Yeah.
or the previous person he mentioned this, like, what if somebody who doesn't know, like, yeah, he did say that. He said that he thinks that shirk is only something which Muslims can do because only Muslims know about Allah, right?
Mhm.
Something along those lines. There is you see the problem why shirk is so one of the main reasons why shirk is so dangerous, right? Is because if somebody is a mushrik, then and allows other people to claim over his ibadah, then Allah can't correct that person. The guidance that comes from Allah, it can't be correct. You can't correct this person. Why? Because Allah could be given guidance, right? Corrective guidance towards the truth. But this person has another Rabb as well. He has another Rabb who he will listen to as well,
Correct. So
right?
that's what I was saying.
So
Like
it
people,
can't, yeah. So
God has.
what happens is that it can't be the guidance of Allah cannot find its way and completely correct the
Correct.
person, because
Yeah.
there's somebody else that has that similar claim over him, right?
Correct.
So when you talk about the people like they said Hitler and people like, I mean, I don't know how well how religious they were, but they were Christians as far as I could tell, right? Right, they were all Christian. I mean, these people like Hitler and other people like him, they were Christians,
Correct.
right? There were
Correct.
people who had. Yeah, sorry, go
But
ahead. Maybe I'm.
yes, I was saying that these Nazis, what they did, that God has given human being an understanding of empathy and
Hmm,
helping neighbors, as Quran also mentioned, helping
yeah.
neighbors and forgiveness and all this stuff. So they just
Hmm,
neglected all those aspects, and they
hmm,
just followed a racial. what you call a racial, I mean, supremacy aspect, which
Mm.
is like, I mean, instead of God's wisdom, which was there in their heart, they
Mm.
followed Hitler's deceptive
Yeah,
thing. So it's like they were serving
yeah.
that
I see what
thing.
you mean. Yeah. So this comes up to the other thing which I didn't get. I mean, here I mentioned in this presentation we talked about shirk, dua
Hmm.
ma'Allah, and dua
Yeah.
min dunillah. The one thing I didn't mention was there's also ibadah min dunillah, right?
Hmm.
So I don't know what the Nazis, were they atheists or not. Let's pretend for a minute that they were completely atheists, right? That they were all atheists, right? So what would they be then is they wouldn't be mushrikeen, right? If they were in this
Hmm.
situation and what they did in terms of their servitude towards Hitler or towards the Nazi party or these sort of things, that servitude, it's still ibadah, right? But it's
Hmm.
not shirk because it's not ibadah ma'Allah, which is shirk, right? Shirk is
Okay.
ibadah ma'Allah. So this is
Hmm.
ibadah min dunillah.
Yeah.
Ibadah min, so they are on ibadah now to Hitler, to this, etc. So they are serving that. They are on ibadah that. It's still haram, of course, etc. But why
Hmm.
isn't it shirk? And why is it not as dangerous as shirk?
Hmm.
Because when if this person who's in ibadah to other than Allah, that's just other than Allah. That's it, right? They
Hmm.
are not exposed to what Allah is commanding yet, right? So they are not sharing. It's not like that they have this. They have Allah commanding and somebody else commanding, and they are choosing the batil which is with other than Allah over the haqq which is with Allah, right? They're not doing
Hmm.
that yet. So that means what? That means that this person who is in ibadah min dunillah to other than Allah,
Hmm.
when Allah comes on the scene, that
Hmm.
person can change completely. They can flip. They
Hmm.
can see, I see the haqq and I turn. And I'm now in ibadah to Allah only. Right? They can flip. You see what I mean? The
Yeah.
problem with shirk is the person he's already in ibadah of Allah, but he's in ibadah of others with Allah. So
Hmm.
already the haqq is there in front of him. What God is commanding is already there. But sometimes he's deliberately choosing the batil. He's deliberately being in ibadah to other than Allah. Right? This person is very difficult for the guidance of Allah to reach the person. Right?
Hmm.
And not only that, they propagate it to others after them. Right?
Hmm.
They make other people to be in ibadah to Allah and others with Allah. Right?
Hmm.
So you have this problem with it. So there's this other aspect which is, like I said in the Quran, it's called ibadah min dunillah, wa abiduna
Hmm.
min dunillahi ma, etc. So you have these verses.
Correct. Because I think
And
similarly, Pharaoh also, the Egyptian Pharaoh,
yeah,
he did that thing. I mean, he
yes, that's
considered
right.
himself divine. I think, and I think similarly, Genghis Khan, when he, as you're aware, like when Muslims were there, he killed so many millions of Muslims. When Genghis Khan, he himself said that I came as a like something.
Mm. Yeah, I don't know
But
about Genghis Khan, but yes, in the Quran, of course, Fir'aun is the one who's saying, ما علمت لكم من إله غيري. I don't know of any ilah for you other than me.
correct.
It's only me, right?
Hmm.
So those who were in him with that, okay, they were in ibadah to him alone, not with Allah. They weren't mushrikeen in that kind of way,
Hmm.
right? They were in ibadah to only him,
So
which
what
is
I,
why
yeah.
when, for example, the magicians, when they saw the
Hmm.
haqq, they were able to change so quickly, right? Because they were in ibadah to him, then they saw the thing, and then they changed, right? They left the ibadah to Fir'aun and they became
Hmm.
in ibadah to Allah,
Hmm.
right?
So what I understand is that in order for any human being to associate anything with God, he should know about God, plus he should know about the other. I mean, and then he chooses.
Yeah,
Is that?
yeah. That's what shirk is about. It's about association with Allah,
Mhm.
right? The other thing,
Mhm.
ibadah min
Mhm.
dunillah, is a separate category. It's a separate category in the Quran,
Mhm.
right? There's a ibadah
Mhm.
that you don't see in the Quran. If you look through the Quran, you won't find the ibadah ma'allah. You won't find the
Mhm.
phrase يعبدون مع Allah, that they are on ibadah
Correct.
with Allah to something. Because instead of that, the Quran says shirk.
Mhm.
Okay? Because it's
Correct. Correct.
ibadah of Allah, another, so it says shirk instead of that. But you do find ibadah min dunillah, right?
Correct.
And when it comes to dua, you find both.
Mhm.
You find dua ma'allah and dua min dunillah. You find both.
Correct.
But for ibadah,
Yeah.
for ibadah ma'allah, it's not there because that is basically the meaning of shirk. that you're in ibadah to Allah, like a pantheon. Allah is part of a
Mm.
pantheon, right?
Mm.
Allah is one God among others, and you're in ibadah to them.
Correct.
Right?
Correct.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
yes,
that's
to be a
yeah.
mushrik, yes, you have to
Yeah.
be a mushrik. How can you associate anything with Allah if you don't believe in Allah, or if you don't
Mm.
think Allah exists? You can't. Okay, but
Correct.
you
Correct.
can be in ibadah to other than Allah, right? You can be that. Yeah.
So I think that's the reason why, like, for Muslims, we need to understand that in the Quran it mentions that in the Surah Hajj 22:17 that now if we see society wise, some are Christians, believers. So that's why Quran mentions that God will judge between them when God will manifest on the day of this thing. So it
You're
would be
talking
difficult.
about
That's why Quran, yeah, the Quran 22:17 verse. And then I think Dr. Farhan Al Maliki also had an interview which was very viral. In that, he mentioned that, for example, lay Sri Lankan woman who is just working in a farm
yeah.
and she follows her own religion, whatever.
Mm,
And her understanding of Islamic faith is all this the bloodshed and Taliban and I mean putting women and all those things, polygamy and all.
mm,
So how will she believe in God or this form of
yeah.
faith? So God will judge on those values. So that is the reason why 22:17 has clearly mentioned that God will judge among these categories of people, Christians,
Mm,
Jews, and people who associate, because God is
yeah.
witness of everything. So I think
Yeah.
that Farhan Al Maliki has rightly touched that point in that
Yeah.
interview.
I mean, that verse, I think it says in Allah, يَفْصِلُ بَيْنَهُم, that Allah will separate between them. You
Yeah.
know, يَفْصِل means to separate between them. Could say, yes,
Mm,
it's going to judge. It's Yom
mhm,
al-Fasl. But
mhm,
I think the thing is more about fasl. When you talk about the word fasl, it means to sort of like, separate things. There's this group categorize, right? Categorize
mhm.
people. So they're separate. So meaning that they're not the same. That's one of the
Yeah.
verses that shows that the Christians are not mushrikeen. The Jews are not
Yeah.
mushrikeen, right? Because
Mm,
Allah says yafsil bainahum. Right? There's
yeah.
the mushrikeen, and then there's the mu'mineen, and then there's the Jews, and then there's the Christians and the Majus. All of these are
Mm,
different groups. Allah will separate on the day of judgment,
correct.
right?
Correct. Absolutely. And one last thing I just wanted to ask, like about Dr. Farhan Al Maliki is first, like what's his current status, and second is any plans in the coming time. So whatever interviews he has given, whatever things he has published, anything that can be uploaded in Chat GPT or anything that can be used for the future generation about this.
That could
Any
be. That's
progress on that?
That's an interesting thing. I don't know if ChatGPT. I mean, it does work in Arabic. I saw some people using
Yeah, because
ChatGPT.
his literature, his interviews needs to come out for all people who can, perhaps in the coming time, maybe in other languages also, so that
Yeah,
people
I don't
can.
know. So maybe there's good trends. Like now, you probably there's probably some AI program maybe where you can put in the video. It will listen to the audio, transcribe it in Arabic, and then translate it all in one go. Maybe I don't know. Um,
Correct.
but I don't know. Maybe can we use ChatGPT to
Yes,
translate? I
yes,
wonder. Okay,
yes.
it
That can be
translates.
uploaded. Yes, it can upload, and whatever interviews he has given, another thing can be uploaded so that people
I
can
mean,
go in ChatGPT and they
can
can.
it translate? Does ChatGPT
Uh,
translate?
Not
If you
sure
put
about
something,
translate. Not
yeah,
sure
if you
about
put
translate
something,
in other languages, like, but
hmm, if I don't know if you put something in it, I don't know,
mm,
but yeah. So it would be good. But I don't know, to be honest, because I'm sort of like I'm really
yeah.
busy these days. I want
But
to actually do
is
more
there any
more translation.
website that Dr. Farhan Maliki prepared, any website and all wherein people
Yeah,
can?
yeah. His main website has got so much on it. So I advise
Mhm,
people if they want to, go to it. It's al maliki.org. Let me just
mhm.
try and get it up now. And you can actually just use a transition plugin, right?
Yeah.
A hold on, Al-Maliki.
So is it in English, this website, or
No, no. So, but you could
in
use,
Arabic?
yeah, you could use a plugin to translate. Okay, which one is it?
Because these all things will be useful for the future generations. I mean, yeah.
Mm.
Because now everything like paper and all, I mean, it will go away in the coming time.
Yeah,
Everything is going to be digitalized.
yeah, everything getting digitalized. Should be. Where is his website? Come on. Yeah, he has it written in a very strange way, like the transliteration.
Yeah.
So I'm always like, hey, what is it? 1 second, I have to type it in Arabic.
And in regards to his release or anything, any update about that?
No, I mean, his son was released, alhamdulillah.
Thank God. Yeah.
Actually, I was surprised about that because I didn't see much on it. And then suddenly I hear that he was released a few months ago. So that's a good thing. Finally, he was released, Al-Abbas. But he
Inshallah,
still, no, unfortunately. So here it is.
inshallah, this misunderstanding that happened with the authorities, and I think it gets resolved. Whatever that misunderstanding is.
Hopefully. So here's the website. I'll just put it in the chat.
Yeah.
It's almaliki.org. Almaliki.org. So that's his main website. You could use a translation plugin to just translate the page. Sometimes when you just open a page, on Google, it offers to translate it for you anyway. So it can translate for you, and you can navigate that way. It will look broken in English, but you should be able to get the gist from it.
Sure. Jazakallah. Thanks a lot. So that's it.
All right.
Thanks a lot. Yeah.
All right. Okay, brilliant. Thank you so much for coming on. All right. Okay. So that's the end of the stream. I don't know if there's any questions in the chat. If there's something I haven't seen and somebody wants to put it on again, please do so. Let me go a little bit back, see if there's something where. Right, sovereignty. So I'm just looking through the chats, trying to see if there's something I missed. We don't master in today's English. Do parents raise their children to be in ibadah towards them? Some might, but mostly parents will tell their children to be in ibadah to the things that they themselves are in ibadah to, right? So the parents, you'll find that they're in ibadah to something, to sect, country, whatever it is, sheikh, imams, cult, if they're in a cult, whatever it is, and they will try to get raise their children to be the same like them, not really towards them as much. I don't think there are many parents who would tell their children, listen to me no matter what, Allah says, for example. So I don't think so. Anyway, let me go back down to the bottom. Oops, what is this? That's just me. Here we go. Hi, Khalid. I'm trying to understand. Bani Israel knew what was right and still listened to Samari and worshipped an inanimate. Okay, so this is a very good. Maybe I should have put this as well. I should have actually mentioned this to that to the brother I was speaking to first. That, like what you said here, is what you find in every tafsir, and whenever people are speaking about it on the pulpit, any preacher, they will always say that the Bani Israel worshipped the golden calf, right? They worshipped the golden calf, and they will say this, right? People will say this in Arabic. They will say it, Abdul Ijl. They worship the Ijl, but and can't believe I forgot to highlight this, but in the Qur'an, from beginning to end, whenever the golden calf is mentioned, that incident, it's never, the word ibadah is never used, not once. The Quran never says that they worshipped, i.e. ibadah, the golden calf. They didn't, right? They never worshipped it. What it says, اتخذوا العجل, right? I mean, it's a very noticeable thing when you look at it, because of course the story of Musa comes up a lot, and the mention of Bani Israel and the Ijl comes up a lot. I think it comes up like 6 or 7 times. Let me see. I'll look it up very quickly on my app here. Yeah, so so there's this verse in Surah Al-Baqarah with وعدنا موسى 40 ليلة ثم اتخذتم العجل من بعده وأنتم ظالمون. When we promised Musa for 40 nights, or we met him for 40 nights, and you took the calf, you took the golden calf, not you worshipped it. It didn't say ibadat, it says you took it. And again, with قال موسى لقومه يا قوم إنكم ظلمتم أنفسكم باتخاذكم العجل. When Musa said to his people, "Oh my people, you have really wronged yourselves by taking the ijl," right? Not by being ibadah to it. It didn't say بعبادكم العجل. It says باتخاذكم العجل. And again, وَلَقَدْ جَاءَكُمْ مُوسَى بِالْبَيِّنَاتِ ثُمَّ اتَّخَذْتُمُ الْعِجْلِ. And then you took the ijl, right? You took it as what? As an ilah. In one verse it mentions, right? You took the ilah, the ijl, as an ilah. But the ibadah wasn't to it. The ibadah was, surprise, surprise, towards the Samiri, right? Right? The ibadah was towards the Samiri. It wasn't towards the ijl, right? The Samiri was the one who said it, who commanded it, who did it, and so if there was any ibadah, it was towards him, right? It wasn't towards the ijl. The ijl, they took it as an ilah, and it was something stupid, and Allah forgave them. And remember, Allah says He doesn't forgive shirk, right? Which is why it's very clearly mentioned deliberately. Every verse which mentions that, it never says ibadah. They weren't in ibadah to al-ijl. Okay? And another verse here with أخذنا ميثاقكم ورفعنا فوقكم الطور خذوا ما آتيناكم بقوة واسمعوا قالوا سمعنا وعصينا. It says وأشربوا في قلوبهم العجل بكفرهم قل بئس ما يأمركم بكم يا إيمانكم كنتم صادقين. That doesn't mention اتخاذ العجل, but it mentions the ijl. Then it says another verse فأخذتهم الصاعقة بظلمهم ثم اتخذوا العجل. And then they took the ijl after the clear signs had come to them. And then it says another verse إن الذين اتخذوا العجل سينالهم غضب من ربهم وذلة في الحياة الدنيا. Those who took the ijl, never says ibadah. Now it's a very striking thing when you notice it, because throughout Islamic history, in every tafsir, it will talk about Muslims will always use, preachers in English or Arabic, they will always use the word that they worshipped the ijl, the golden calf, or they went ibadah to it. But the Quran deliberately does not use that word, deliberately. So it isn't ibadah. It isn't ibadah, right? And what does Musa say to them when he comes back? He says somebody, do you see this ilah الذي ظلت عليه عاكفا, which you started doing rituals towards? Because the Bani Israel, when they crossed the Bahr, the sea, they came across a people who had asnam, who had idols, يعكفون عليها, right? يعكفون, doing these rituals towards them, right? These are just called rituals, right? It's not called ibadah, right? And then they of course say to Musa, "Oh Musa, make for us an ilah, just like they have an ilah. Make for us an ilah like they have an ilah," right? So there's that. But maybe I didn't read this question properly. I'm trying to understand. When Israel knew what was right and still followed the Samiri and worshipped an inanimate object, why is it that they had been forgiven? Yeah, exactly. So they didn't commit shirk in their sort of quote unquote worshiping the idol. Okay, that wasn't shirk, right? What they did was, أضلهم السامري, the Quran says. Even the being taken away by Samiri, it was, what was it? It was a very, when you read it in the Quran, it's a very sort of like hesitant kind of thing. So he did this, Samiri did this, he created this ijl, right? And then they said, this is the ilah, your ilah and the ilah of Musa, but he forgot. This is your God and the God of Musa, but he forgot, right? And then there was Harun, right, trying to, say, no, your Lord is Allah, right? So listen to me. But then they wouldn't listen to him, and they almost killed him, right? So were they in ibadah to a Samiri? It doesn't even mention it in that way, right? What was their attitude towards a Samiri, right? So because they said, this is your ilah and ilah of Musa, fanasi, right? And basically, Bani Israel were idolatrous still. This is before even the Jews themselves. They will say this about themselves, that Bani Israel, before the covenant of Musa, before Musa came back, they were still basically idolaters, right? They were idol worshippers, right? When we say that that Bani Israel knew the right from the wrong and knew this and this, I don't know about that, because they were slaves in Egypt, right? They were basically same as everybody else almost, right? They were basically idol worshippers. Maybe some of them were worshipped Pharaoh as well. And then the whole thing was Musa trying to get them out. Okay, and it was later that the Tawheed was established for them, right? It was after the covenant on the mountain with Musa, when Musa came back with the alwah and all of this. This is when that happened. This is when really Ben Israel became, people of Tawheed and people who were given knowledge, and it was then. Before then, they were basically just refugees. It wasn't like I don't think they were being that knowledge was spread to them as much then, right? All of the focus in the beginning was just getting them out, right? Getting them out from under Pharaoh's yoke. But still, of course, no. Musa would have told them, to be in ibadah to Allah and all the rest, taught them proper Islam. But they were just very, very soon removed from that. Very soon removed from that situation. So they still had the mindset of idolaters. It seemed they didn't change that quickly. Like I said, even like the Muslims, the Arabs, right? The prophets preached for how long? Not that long, really. It takes a long time to change people. Most people don't change that quickly, and the Sahaba and the Ummah knew it was wrong to fight in wars after the Prophet. Very soon they did that after the Prophet died. But what wouldn't that mean, that what they did is not shirk then? Yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying. It wasn't shirk. They were not in ibadah to the golden calf. Essentially, you can't be in ibadah to an inanimate object, right? You can't be in ibadah to something which is not, which is inanimate. How can you? How are you going to serve a golden calf? How can you be an abd, a slave to it? What will it tell you to do? It won't tell you to do anything. It can't tell you do this, don't do this. It doesn't demand any rituals. It doesn't say, bow down to me 5 times a day. It doesn't tell you laws or rules or tell you how to. It doesn't tell you anything. And exactly, it was forgiven because it wasn't shirk, because it wasn't ibadah, right? And God forgave it, exactly like you said. Trying to understand what it says. إنه من يشرك بالله فقد حرم ربه عليه الجنة. That one, right? That verse in Surah Al-Ma'idah. Let me bring it out. This I've talked about it in some place, I remember. The verse in Ma'idah where it says لقد كفر الذين قالوا إن الله هو المسيح ابن مريم وقال المسيح يا بني إسرائيل اعبدوا الله ربي وربكم إنه من يشرك بالله فقد حرم الله عليه الجنة ومأواه النار وما للظالمين من أنصار. Right, so it's as simple as that. I mean, it's it's saying that the person who is in shirk to Allah, right, who is, إنه من يشرك بالله, the way it's written there, إنه من يشرك بالله, so this is what they're sort of like their state. They're always in shirk with Allah. They're doing shirk to Allah, right? إنه من يشرك بالله فقد حرم الله عليه الجنة, right? That Allah has made Jannah haram. And because the shirk is not going to be forgiven, so if they're constantly doing shirk, this is their state. They're in the state of shirk, and the actions are actions of shirk, and they're constantly not. How can they make up for that when that's all of their actions? There's a bit more to say about that verse, but because what's happening here is Isa is basically, he's speaking to. There's two streams of commands in this verse, right? لقد كفر الذين قالوا إن الله هو المسيح ابن مريم. So what's being mentioned in this verse is there are those who said the Masih is, Allah is the Masih, Allah is Christ, right? And then there is Christ himself, Isa, who is saying اعبدوا الله ربي وربكم, okay? And then basically he's putting forward that, look, I'm saying this, they are saying that, and which of these two are you going to choose, right? Which one of you are going to choose? So it's like it's Isa here is warning against these people. He's warning against the people who are trying to deify him, right? إنه من يشرك بالله فقد حرم الله عليه الجنة ومأواه النار. Yeah, 9:6. Yeah, حتى يسمع كلام الله. فمنه حتى يسمع كلام الله. What you mentioned. Yeah. All right. I think that's we'll call it quits now. We've been on, I think, how long? 2 hours and almost 17 minutes now. Jazakallah khair. Thank you so much for coming on and for the couple of guests we had. And until next time, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.